Make it quick, please. The woman in the white suit collapsed on the marble, her hair fanned out like a bad postcard, and the whole room, 37 floors above the city, went silent, like someone had cut the soundtrack mid-song. Her hand flailed toward a shadowed corner where a man in a faded cleaning jacket stood rag in hand, and she whispered his name, Sam. Please. Nobody understood why the CEO was begging a janitor until his hands started to move, and then the whole room held its breath. Act 1. Invisible Man. Morning light hit the glass tower of Beacon Biofarm and made it gleam all chrome and confidence, the lobby polished enough to see your flaws if you wanted to. Samuel Reed pushed his cart through the service elevator, shoulders bent from years of scrubbing floors. Hair threaded with gray uniform hanging loose. The uniform had become armor. The silence around him, his sentence. Once he wore scrubs, once he signed his name as Dr. Samuel Reed, cardiothoracic surgeon teaching at a top hospital, saving lives like people save time. 4 years ago, everything changed. A forged email bought testimony, a headline that killed a reputation. And overnight, Doctor became a memory you tucked away in a drawer. He knew the building like the grooves on his hands. He knew where executives hung their coats, where the light hit the marble at noon, where the champagne glass was likely to tip. He knew every tile he'd polished 1,000 times felt the echo of laughter that never included him. Tonight was the big pitch. Cardiolift, a drug that would revolutionize cardiac care. Rachel Monroe, in a white designer suit at the center of a glittering storm, investors, hungry cameras ready. Samuel folded his hands around the mop and watched the room get ready to celebrate the future, unaware it was about to brush against his past. Act 2. Scene at last. Rachel took the stage like someone born under a spotlight. Her heels, a metronome smile, calibrated speech rehearsed to the exact second. She spoke about integrity, about rooting out corruption, about how Beacon only accepted excellence. The irony cut Samuel like a cold tile. He remembered the investigation, the whisper campaign, the polite applause as his name was replaced with another. He remembered her eyes when she demanded his career, how she smiled while she sank a life. She told a story about exposing a fraud, and the room rose up with applause, and Samuel felt his spine tighten around the memory like barbed wire. Halfway through, a waiter slipped and champagne hit the floor near the exit. The small mess was Samuel's cue. He moved reflex and muscle from a different life, and he flicked the glass out of the air, a surgeon's catch, precise and instant. A young reporter who bumped his cart muttered an apology, actually saw him and said, "You okay, man?" She meant it, and for a second Samuel saw a face that only ever showed up in his life on camera, someone who could make the invisible visible. When a wealthy attendee suddenly swayed and collapsed, the room turned into a fractal of panic, and a man in a suit started chest compressions because that's the script, but Samuel watched differently. The pale skin, the cadence of breath, the way the neck veins told a story if you knew how to read them. He said nothing at first. Who listens to a janitor? But then he couldn't. He stepped forward and in 5 words controlled a room of people who had told him to stay out of sight his entire life. Don't compress. Check glucose first. The compressed lungs relaxed, and the crowd blinked. An ECG readout was checked, and a nurse handed orange juice like a confession. The man recovered, and a ripple of "Who is that?" moved through the room. And then Rachel stumbled. A pale tone under the makeup, her fingers pressed at her chest like a secret trying to escape. She went to the podium, and then the microphone clattered and she crumpled. The celebration collapsed into chaos. Phones raised like lances, someone screamed for an ambulance, and 100 hands fumbled for authority. A cardiologist lunged to compress her chest. It was the thing the training told him to do, until Samuel shouted, "Stop! If you compress her, you'll rupture her heart." They turned toward him like the air itself had spoken. He told them what he was seeing. Jugular veins distended at displaced apex, signs of acute decompensated heart failure, not classic arrest. Words you learn in med school and carry like tools. People scoffed at first. A security guard reached for him. A man in an expensive suit sneered, "Who are you to talk?" And then Dr. Henry Cole, a professor who'd been in the back, pushed through and said, slow as a judge, "He's right. I can see it too." You could feel the room flip, and when Rachel's lips barely formed his name, Sam. The sound hit him like a verdict. In one breath, he heard the years of humiliation of being called a liar, of being shuffled into shadows, and in the next, he heard a life asking for mercy. There are moments when everything asks you to be smaller, and moments when the universe asks you to be who you were meant to be. Sam remembered the oath he had taken long ago, do no harm, and he knelt. He stripped off his gloves, put his hands where hands had once saved lives, and started directing the chaos with a calm so surgical it stopped people mid-step. He called for IV furosemide nitrates, asked for quiet so he could count her pulse like a metronome, ordered positions and pressures, and within minutes that felt like lifetimes, her breathing steadied. He showed them the pieces that made her situation precarious. She'd been taking cardiolift in secret, she had undiagnosed hypertrophic cardiomyopathy, the drug was contraindicated. And the absurdity of it all landed like a stone. That's when the twist came. Someone in the crowd recognized the way he moved, the precision in his touch, and a doctor who'd once trained with him stood up and said the words that would shake the night. "This isn't a janitor. This is Dr. Samuel Reed. He taught half the cardiothoracic surgeons in this city." Phones flicked open, fingers typed the room. Rewound the last 4 years, in a second the man they had erased with headlines and paid witnesses suddenly live on 1,000 little screens. Rachel, still catching her breath on the floor, said something that cracked the floorboards of everyone's conscience. I did it. I fabricated evidence. I wanted my company to look clean." The confession landed like thunder. Act 3. Justice and the Gray Area. The next hours moved like a film montage. Paramedics arrived. Sam spoke clinical shorthand into radios. A viral clip was born in the chaos. The janitor with the surgeon's hands, and the internet, that rough court of public opinion, handed down a verdict before the legal one did. Beaconstock dipped regulators asked questions nobody had thought to ask before, and the boardroom, where he'd been invisible the night before, became a court of light. Rachel made a recorded apology, legal settlements were arranged, investigations reopened, and the board scrambled to pick pieces off a floor that now smelled like scandal. But the heart of the matter wasn't about headlines. It was about the way we decide who is worthy of being heard. Samuel's license was reviewed. The old accusations were shown to be based on paid testimony and forged documents. His medical board reinstated his license, but the reinstatement was not a resurrection of what was lost. Time doesn't hand back the years you missed with a smile, and reality doesn't erase the nights he spent scrubbing floors while trying to breathe through what had been taken. In the operating room where Sam finally returned, he wasn't looking for a curtain call, he was looking for the work itself. He stood behind glass headset on guiding a surgeon's hands through a septal myectomy, the kind of surgery he'd done hundreds of times when his name still meant something. The team performed like a clock. The patient lived. Outside the ICU, cameras and applause were smaller than the quiet of a steady heartbeat. Rachel, volunteering at a free clinic months later, folded forms for veterans, the same hands that once signed a forged paper, now holding a pen to make things right. Ending. Open question. So, what do we do with this story? Do we cheer because the camera found him and the algorithm judged in his favor? Or do we ask a harder question? How many Samuels never get an 8-second clip? How many skilled, honest people are pushed into corners because power wants a clean story? Justice arrived here, but it came loud and messy, driven by outrage, not by fairness built into the system. That's a problem, because fairness that depends on virality is not justice, it's luck. If this moved you, tell me what you think. Would you have saved the person who ruined you? Is forgiveness strength or surrender? Do we trust systems enough to correct themselves, or do we need to keep pointing out the cracks? Drop a comment, share a story. If you've seen someone invisible, become visible, and if you believe in doing the right thing, even when no one is watching, hit like and subscribe, because the conversations that hurt a little are the ones worth having. You know what I mean? Let's talk.